Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, presented by T.A. Forsberg and Wagoner Financial. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
The coronavirus pandemic disrupted everything you can possibly think of, including the arts in our community. Here to discuss how the industry is rebounding and changing is my good friend and owner and director of Opportunity Arts, Mr. Mike Marriott. Welcome back, Mike.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me back.
You know, it's been a minute.
It has.
I haven't had you on in a little while, but now it seems like a good time to kind of get caught up on how things are evolving now that we are late post out of the pandemic. We'll see where things go. So share with us real quick, just for those who haven't heard you speak with us before, and I encourage you to check the archives because Mike has been a regular on board here, but talk about Opportunity Arts. What does your organization do?
So Opportunity Arts is a for-profit arts organization that assists artists with pursuing their careers. So whether that be musicians that want to put on events or whether that be visual artists that want to sell their work, we work with them to optimize their career the best potential possible. Because
a lot of them are not business-minded, right?
No.
Yeah,
no.
It makes a lot of sense to have someone, you know, you think about the cook that tries to own a restaurant.
Right.
I'm a chef. I'm great at it. I think I'm going to sell my food for money, and now I'm going to open a restaurant. But there's gaps in that knowledge base, and everyone needs support, and Opportunity Arts fills that.
Yep.
That's great. So the pandemic hits in 2020, and, you know, talk about, you know, I think crowds for music and you know, galleries, you know, that normally have people wandering around being closed and stuff. How were the various arts disrupted during that time?
Well, while the pandemic was going on, everything kind of just came to a stop. Like, we were working with visual artists, and I think we talked about once where they were like, what do we do? And I'm like, you're all Bob Ross now. Like, you all have to be captivating on film because now how everyone's going to watch you is scrolling. Yeah. And so I think we've been dealing with coming out of it, the artists that are better at adapting and because everything continues to change like monthly.
Right.
And so I think the ones that are adapting the best, you know, kind of in nature, those that adapt survive. And so that's kind of what we're looking at now is that adaptation from, okay, well, we went from no events and then the pandemic ended, and then it was like an onslaught of events.
Right. Pent up demand.
Yeah.
And pent up amounts of work probably ready to be shown, and songs that have been written and all that stuff. Talk about maybe a couple of successful examples of people who were able to navigate that. So let's talk mid to late 2020, early 2021. Can you think of a couple examples of how, when everything was kind of shut down, how you got creative to have
that was
them
the thing
do
too.
Their thing?
We had organized an event. Our company had worked with partnered with a couple other organizations to put on a drive-through Halloween show in a parking ramp. Like, just because that technically wasn't inside, but you still had a roof because you had the different levels. So that was what I mean about that adaptation of, okay, we have to rethink what's happening. Right. And then I think what's also fascinating is now that we've been out of it a little bit, is now to see what's happening with all those things, because I think a lot of people were craving events. And so when the pandemic ended, it was whoosh. Well, now it's almost like it's saturating the market with events, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because now there's literally an event every weekend, every Saturday, Sunday, and it's all pitched the same way. Live music, vendors, art. And so now it's like, now people are starting to be like, okay, well, what's next? What's new? What's going to be different? What do I want to go to now? And people are getting back into that. I'm not just going out to go out. I want to go out with a purpose. And what's that going to look like? And so that's kind of what some artists are transferring to now.
Right, because, you know, there's two ways it seems like this could naturally go. One is you stop all the dog and pony shows that were a Band-Aid to get through this tough time, and you go back to art galleries and live music at the venues that we have and things like that. But there's also like well, what do we learn, and how do we maybe blend some of the stuff that worked in the past with some of the new fresh things that we've rolled out and that people have gravitated to?
Yeah. I think one of the things that's happening is the way people are consuming art is different.
Okay.
Even with the gallery showings and stuff like that, they're having to add a measure of mystique to it, or, you know, we worked with an artist who has they're doing a show on 2 different nights in the same venue. One night is family friendly and one night is 18 plus because it's a body paint show.
Oh, okay.
And so there's like this, like those are kind of the things of, well, I want to have this for everybody to come and enjoy, but I also want to put this special part onto it, and I can monetize that more.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of what's happening too. I hope that answered your question a little bit.
Absolutely. Sure. Now, where would a show like that be held?
Actually, the Micah Gallery in Lansing was one of the places that did that. They've done some other stuff, but also we've had artists now that have been partnering with minor league sports teams. And I think that's the thing, too, when we talk about the way that art is consumed. You're seeing that kind of push over. I think a lot of the younger artists, I would say Gen Z artists, are kind of realizing, like, hey, wait a minute. Sports is entertainment. We're entertainment. What if we started to do what they're doing? And that's what I think you're starting to see now, is because we had the same artist who was putting on the body paint show, worked with a local sports team here in Michigan.
Okay.
For their big 4th of July event, and actually it was one of the biggest paydays that they had. So we actually have a statistic where there's certain communities where the artists are making more working with the sports franchises than they are from the actual quote-unquote art scene of grants and those kind of things. And so I think the way they're getting money in and the way it's being consumed by the audience is completely different.
Got it. So how, without getting into too many of the private details, but how would, say, this body painter artist and partnering with a sports team, how does that money happen? Is it part of the gate, like the ticket sales, or is there money being exchanged at the actual event?
Fan engagement.
Okay.
It's totally fan engagement. So, like, for instance, if you go to a Detroit Lions game, you're going to see the drum line. Right. That drum line is hired and compensated through the Detroit Lions.
Okay.
And when you go into that game, like, if you didn't have the drum line now, you'd be like, what's going on at the Lion Gate? You know what I mean? So it's become part of that ingrained thing. And
or the cheerleaders,
the murals that are in Ford Field.
Yep.
You're starting to see more of those. And now it's like, okay, well, let's integrate art into the actual production of the games. Like and I think we may have mentioned on the show before, I always say the Super Bowl is an art show with a football game in the middle of it.
Right.
You know, a couple of years ago, they opened with a poet to start the Super Bowl. They have a halftime show that's music. They have art. They have light shows. It's all art. Right. It's just not, you don't think of it because you're not like, well, I'm not in a gallery or I'm not at a, smoky music venue. Right. So it doesn't hit you. But then you're like, wait a minute, the best concert I saw last year was that, you know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah.
My mom still talks about the Super Bowl 40 halftime show with the Rolling Stones. Right. My mother also has a huge crush on Mick Jagger. So that's, part of it.
And I'll tell you, Chris Stapleton did a great job with the Super Bowl last year.
Yeah.
I mean, what a memorable performance. Some will go down in history. So that's great. Okay. So it seems like a lot of this is kind of a revolution. I know we've talked about it before, but I want to really give it some credence now, especially as you're discovering and experiencing all these new ways that people are consuming art. And that is, to never again say the term starving artist. Mm-hmm. How to monetize these folks that bring joy and beauty into our lives every day, and not have them have to have part-time gigs that are outside of their passion, but let them make a living doing what they're meant to be doing.
Yep.
And so is this sustainable? I mean, do you think that there's enough learning and enough appetite for the artists that we have that are good? I mean, again, not everyone's going to make it, but people that are good, I mean, do you feel like there is a path where people can have a sustainable wage, a consistent wage doing this new version of art?
I do. I've jokingly called it the artistic reformation. You know what I mean? Where you have the traditional model, but again, you're seeing a lot of them go to that for-profit model. A lot of them are going to that. I also think too, it's a difference between if you're having someone who's like a full-time artist and they've made the commitment that this is what's going to feed my family, put my kids in school, etc. Yep. Or you have somebody who maybe like is a full-time teacher, they do art on the side. You know what I mean? And I think different communities are like filling those voids with like, okay, if I'm in a community that doesn't have, that the market is not as big from just an entertainment area, they're going to have there's more stuff for them to choose from more of the hobbyist end. But then you have a lot of the artists now, even post-pandemic, hey, I've got to go all over the state, especially the ones that live in Michigan. They're like, I got to go to Grand Rapids. I got to go to Traverse City. I got to go to Ann Arbor. I got to go to Detroit. Those are my big 4 money pillars. You know what I mean? And now that these events and things and, that kind of stuff's happening, and like we talked about with the Super Bowl, now you're seeing it on a smaller scale with, don't be surprised if you walk into a Grand Rapids Griffin game and you're seeing art at a hockey game.
Right.
Because the artists are also, they've also realized, and this is going to sound weird, but it's not the artist's job to bring people to your event. It's the artist's job to be in front of the people and entertain who's there.
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And so that's where it's like, well, why would I go over to this small festival when I can go to this sporting event and I will see 12,000 people, and at the small festival I will see 1,200 people, right? And so the opportunity to sell your products or the opportunity to make money, it expands as you get around a larger crowd. And so that's kind of what we're seeing.
Yeah. So are we at a stage now where we think we could silver lining the pandemic and say that kind of kickstarted the creativity that might help us out of the financial doldrums?
I think so, but I also think this is a 21st century approach to the art industry. Right. And I think that's the thing too, is art, that when we talked about that artistic reformation, there's half of the arts that's like, okay, we are the arts and we're the traditional and it's a charity, and then there's this new whole young group, and they're young, I mean like early 20s.
Yep.
And they're like, no, art is an industry. And so you're having this for-profit versus non-profit decision that they're making. And I think you're kind of seeing too the way they're creating stuff. Like we have artists now who are doing it for a career, and they're making stuff that it might not be their passion. Like they may be doing a painting. We have an artist doing 2 paintings now of Detroit Lions players that they're looking to work with that organization, worked with them to do this.
Like contracted art.
Yep. Like contracted type art, and art that they're like, well, if I go down to Detroit and I have paintings of Lions players, those are going to sell.
Right.
You know what I mean? As opposed to, I painted this landscape and it's beautiful. They're still doing that, but they understand it's the M. Night Shyamalan. I have to make signs in Sixth Sense so I can make Lady in the Water in the Village.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I need to have this to pay for my passion projects.
Right.
And that's kind of what we're seeing. And it's exciting to me to see like it gives artists these options. Like I could go out and I could start a nonprofit and I can build a big art gallery and I can do it that way, or I can graduate from college. I can be fiscally sponsored. I can be my own independent entrepreneur and I can make money that way. And so it's kind of neat to see this, what's going to happen. And I think right now you have these 2 major business models. Like for instance, with Opportunity Arts, we don't have an executive director or a development director. I'm owner and general manager. We have a head of talent and business relations. We have a data and analytics person. And so it's literally designed, our front office is designed like a sports team hybrid front office with like a wrestling front office. You know what I mean?
You love your wrestling.
I love my wrestling. But again, you go to wrestling and it's choreography, theater in the round, and storytelling. That's art. They're just a different wing of entertainment. And I think that's what these younger artists are seeing. That, oh, wait, sports and wrestling.
Yeah.
And because wrestling's a production.
Yep.
Sports and wrestling and art, there doesn't need to be this big cavern between all of them. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
The idea of, and again, you look at what wrestling and sports brings in crowd-wise. I mean, as an art person, I would love to have stadiums full of people consuming art. And I think that's what the middle of this century is going to look like.
Huh.
I really do. Because now they're having art battles where they have artists like battle each other in speed paints and like,
right.
This is the evolution of that.
And we've had a couple local artists have done the October series where they do a painting and a musical
Yep.
Coordination every day in October, and that. So there's a right now to it.
Yeah.
Right. So historically, art is I've got tickets to this concert, and I can't wait. And on this one night, I'm going to get this group who's going to hit me with their stuff, or I'm going to go to an art gallery because there's maybe a traveling exhibit that I'm excited about, and all the work's done.
Yep.
And it's just sitting there for me to enjoy however I want to enjoy it. But now it is an engagement. You watch it. There's an action to it.
You experience it.
Yeah, you experience. Exactly.
It's making it an experience. And that's the thing too, where it's again, where art can learn from sports is that fan engagement. You know what I mean? When we were, you go to an event to see the game or whatever, but there's that whole leading up to the game and before the kickoff and all that stuff. And that's where art is really there. It's really neat to see. And I think too, a lot of your sports teams that are local are realizing this is a way for us to lift up another wing of our local. Which I think is really cool.
Okay. Now, it might be a loaded question, but I mean, is this Michigan space? I mean, is this a Michigan? I mean, are we in the curve, ahead of the curve, trying to catch up? I mean, what is Michigan's prowess when it comes to art, in your opinion?
I think Michigan's, it's kind of, everybody's trying to still figure it out. I still think everybody's still in that, but I think also certain communities you're seeing artists gravitate to those places. and the one thing I would say to Michigan too, especially for the career artists that are doing it, that they notice how close Chicago is.
Right.
They know,
right.
And so I always tell a professional, if you're, think of having at least 4 quarterly events in Chicago, because it's right there. Even from if you figure Detroit, or now if you're coming down from the UP, it's a farther trip. But again, you have those bigger market cities.
Right.
And I think for the artists that are like, I'm an artist, that's all I do, I don't do anything else, you kind of have to do like almost a tour. Same thing with bands. They tour and do these kind of things.
Right.
But
it's not always convenient.
Right. But I think it's more, I don't have to tour and play New York, Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland. I can do Detroit, Grand Rapids, Traverse City, and I can eke out a decent living doing this.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of what we're seeing too. And the collaborations I think are cool. Like the body painter who did the event with the local sports team, the body paint model was a person who had their degree in dance. And so this was a way for this person who has a degree in dance, like they're not thinking, oh, I'm getting paid, they're thinking as a dancer. And so,
right.
But then that's how it's, like, oh, I got paid by a sports team to do what? To be painted and, be fan engagement.
Right on. I want to thank one of my sponsors here. When it comes to creating commercial and residential spaces, there's no one I trust more than my friends at the Forsberg Real Estate Company. Brent Forsberg and his team take a holistic approach to creating an environment that suits your needs while creating a foundation for a prosperous community. Since the 1950s, Forsberg's been the name to trust if you're looking for a partner on a project to occupy a great space to live or work, or if you simply want to follow one of the great thought leaders in our state. Reach out to my friends at Forsberg Real Estate Company by calling 517-349-9330 or check out their website at lansingrealestate.com. You will not regret it. So career advancement funds, right? So talk to me about how Opportunity Arts is working on bringing financial security to your artists.
So we started these career advancement funds, and basically what it was is a lot of times in art, especially with like traditional art organizations, they have the grants and things like that. And what we thought was, well, we're not a traditional arts organization, so here's the rules, and we threw those out. But one of the things with those career advancement funds is that it allows you to support the artist directly. So if you're a fan of a particular artist and that artist is on our roster, you literally can put money into their career advancement fund, and then that artist can literally pull that, like basically a gift, Opportunity Arts quote unquote gift card that they can use for press relations, social media management, video creation, podcast, all this different stuff.
Yeah.
And so that allows people to literally go, as opposed to, I just want to support the arts. They're like, no, I love that artist.
Right.
And it allows them to support them directly. And a lot of people are like, well, isn't that a popularity contest? And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what that is. Right. But I think that's a cool thing because again, we've been doing popularity contests with arts organizations for 100 years.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like I give to this arts organization, I do that every year. Well, now you can literally give to an individual artist. If they're fiscally sponsored, it's the exact same on your taxes as if you gave to a nonprofit. And so again, a lot of these younger artists are like looking at this, and this is what we get feedback. Like our big thing at Opportunity Arts is our ability to adapt. My favorite animal is an orca, and the reason that they dominate the ocean is because they're the most adaptable creature there. They're also the biggest and fastest. But their ability to adapt and change to what's happening, and that's what we're noticing is there's been a term that's been floated by a lot of Gen Z artists called trickle-down art funding. Which is where the arts go into a nonprofit, and a lot of some of it gets down to the artists, and a lot of those things work out. But this is a way that it's much more direct. It's much more right where it's going, and it shows you this is what the artist used these funds to do and put on, and they made a festival, they curated a gallery, they were involved in the NFL draft, you know what I mean? However that works. So that's kind of what we did with those. And we have you can put it out of marketing. We also did sponsorship with those for small businesses if they want to advertise their business to an arts audience, the same way that you would to a sports audience.
Yep.
They can do that as well, and they can combine those in. We've also built in giving art as part of the sponsorships. So if someone sponsors and advertises, they get art back in return.
Okay, sure.
And so that's kind of what we've noticed. Just working with different groups and different small businesses, large businesses, this is kind of what we're seeing. So I could go into gory details, but I don't.
Well, is that information on your website?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, we're in the midst of re-overhauling it now. But yeah, if you go in there and you go to the opportunityarts.org,
okay,
you can head in there and you'll know you've found our website because the first thing it says is let's make some money, have some fun, and change the world. That is the first thing you will see when you get to our website.
All right.
And then just go in and have fun. And then when you see the career advancement funds, you'll say this is a way to support, and it goes into great detail on all of those. We have an Opportunity Arts fund as well if people want to give to that. But I always say, no, pick your favorite artist.
Right.
You know what I mean? And watch them grow.
And is there a bio on all of the artists that are Opportunity Arts affiliates?
We have links to all of their work.
Got it. Okay.
And so you can kind of go in there to our affiliate member page and you can kind of see all the different artists that we kind of work with and things like that.
Got it. Because our listeners probably don't know who's represented by Opportunity Arts. No. That's all through.
Hopefully everyone at some point. So right. And I think another thing too, and that's important because I've been on the show a couple of times, is you do not have to be a member of Opportunity Arts to utilize our services. If you're a member of Opportunity Arts, you get discounts on those services. It's a loyalty program. But any artist, any person can utilize our services to help build, whether it's a full-time career or, hey, I teach and I want to, I just want extra income on art. What's a good plan? We can advise on that stuff too. So we really want to be the business wing for those artists. Okay. And so I think kind of explaining that too of like, get a hold of us. We do have services. Those services do cost money, but that's, we're trying to industrialize art as much as humanly possible.
Right on. Well, no, that's great. And I would just remind all of our listeners that while, I talk a lot about vibrancy in communities and business development and new projects and things of that nature, vibrancy in our communities is an arts thing. Mm-hmm. If we withdrew all of the art that hits us in our lives that we either identify directly or just kind of flows over us that we take for granted, it's important.
Yep.
Life without art sucks.
Yeah.
And so making sure that these starving artists no longer starve and having people like Opportunity Arts out there making sure that they can put it all together for us to keep our world pretty and sounding good.
Working on it.
Great. Yeah. We're grateful for your work.
Like I said, I think 2020 that we all realized that art wasn't a want, it was a need.
Yeah.
For our mental health, for just us as people. And like you said, try to get through your day and not experience art. You can't do it. You can't. It's impossible.
Right.
So. Is
there anything specific that you want to share that I haven't touched on before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
That's enough.
Yeah, it's just always fun having a good conversation with you.
Right.
You know what I mean about this stuff. I mean, I can run my voice all day and keep yapping and talking, but I don't want to have to do that to your listeners, Chris.
No, that's fine. So, owner and director of Opportunity Arts, Mr. Mike Marriott, opportunityarts.org. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing the after of the pandemic.
Yeah, you bet, Chris. I love being a friend of the show.